Hello everyone, Kurt Holford here, and welcome back to another episode from Holford Labs. Today we're going to be taking a second here to take a look at the deployment of arms after the stick. And what I mean by that is I've been doing a lot of work in regards to the movements, mechanics, and considerations that I might think to do with a lance of Fiore's manuscript, and how we may have to consider other things that go beyond the initial point of contact in the drive and the stick. I've been paying a lot of attention to a book in regards to hunting. It's a medieval hunting book here of the 14th century. The man's name was Febus, and he is essentially the person who wrote a lot about the hunting of the time and about the animals and descriptions of them and ways to hunt them and so on and so forth. A visit that I had to Chateau Foix in France, which is earlier last year, got me to go see where he was at here, as well as I got to see a documentary in regards to how he was, how his manuscript kind of unfolds, and they kind of brought like the images to life, which is really kind of cool. It brought me some ideas here in regards to how hunting actually may be a big part of that, and be a big part of the man at arms, because the reality is hunting is what you do as a man at arms, as a person that would be working against other people here. So the spirit of it is essentially why a person of that time, theory-wise, I'm sharing this with everyone out here, that somebody may deploy this type of hunting practice is they are looking at a way to be able to function with a team, right? And they have the tools right there. They may be hunting, but they're the tools that you will take that are appropriately made for warfare. And I have a running hypothesis that perhaps one of the things that is happening to people of this time, they were hunting in these types of cadres, these bigger groups of people, and some of these parties were quite massive, is I wondered if this is a way that taught young men at arms the ability to work with a team of people that are supporting you while you are on horse, and they would tie up someone there and make it easier for you to pin them down and take the glory, or take the trophy, if you will. Because we know that ransoming is a big piece of that. Interestingly enough, one of the big things about this too that I think is quite fascinating is that because you have this kind of practice right here, of course you had other humans that are involved there. Sometimes they had crossbows or bows with you as well during the hunting thing, but a lot of times it was hunting swords and or spears that would accompany them on this. So regardless on this right here, you're going to see a video here that kind of takes the idea about beyond the stick. And I'm going to have some comments afterwards here. Just want to show some of the footage that I had in regards to this and some of the things that I'm thinking that may or may not be happening in there. And at the very end of it all, I'm going to round this up here to kind of give you my final thoughts. So with that being the case here, let's take a look.
So from this distance right here, this might be spear distance, right? And then if I drive in action, and this is what I'm training, so I give the jerk, which tells me I have to go somewhere else. The reality is if that goes to the groin or out the spine, this guy collapses. This just became a heavy, like, now I'm trying to put this thing up. So that's what I'm trying to explore with there. So, in hot shoot. And the thing is here, what I'm thinking, and this is just if I was teaching, right? So in here, if I stick this guy, he yanks. If that yank right in my friend, I'm in a yank. I'm doing a yank check. So I yank check, it's stuck in you. If I want to go this way, because I have a barrier right here, that I can now, that gives me a second to be able to address this.
Do you want me to drop? Do you say like, well, that's fine, legs go?
Just hold for right now.
Okay.
Because the reality is, what I'm thinking is, if I do this, I'm going to do something like this, up and through, and then drive in.
Yeah.
Right? I've been doing a lot of like, watching boar hunters that use spears, how they hunt. And I think there's a lot of to this. It's not like, oh, we're learning a technique. It's like, no, if you stick a boar, it becomes like, oh shit, I gotta hold this thing right now. Like, then you're trying to drive that way, right? So I think that the hunting is much more about like, they were training, stick them, hold it, I can't yank this out, and now I can go over this. Or worst case scenario, so say like, I hit you, it hits off the stomach area, right?
Yep.
But it's a minor move. It's here, so yank a little bit here. So now I hit, then I'm working with the close one. The sword's useless at that range. The sword is beneficial from the other areas because I have longer range to contend with other things. On the other side, Right? Jerk, over top, down this way. Right, jerk. We do so much like that, right? But the reality is, pull, sit. See, the thing is that this is the guts. If I end up going, put your hands here. If I end up doing this, this is driving up over into this end. That's putting the person down. Right? That's why I like. So again, this is a terrible scabbard. And in my opinion, like, that's why you have the weight at the end to make it so this comes here. So when I do draw it, scabbard comes here. Yeah. But otherwise, it's here in the spot. So because here's the deal: if I stick, this is up and down. If it was here, I can find this immediately. I went the wrong way. So I want to favor my right side, but now I just tripped into my own spear. And this guy's jerking around. That's a wall. Maybe it's not, I don't know. Maybe it's by there, I don't know.
Maybe there's a spear between your legs.
Boom. Stick. There's your real peso. And then stop. That's one of the reasons why do I come up here? Because I can also come right back into high circle. In, hug check, turn, check. If I shoot and I hit you here, and I drive like that, then keep yourself stand up. Stand up. So if I come here and I place you to this hip, as I step 2 and 3, it's going to turn that body this way, which makes all the more reason you can do when you do it. Yep. One.
Yeah.
We're exploring medieval martial arts. So, every week we get together.
Now we don't need a sword, and we don't need a dagger. What'll happen here is we're practicing the action drill. Yeah. So you thrust in, boom. Yeah, and then all that you're doing right here is guide away, touch your hip. You got to make sure you don't get hit that way. My turn. Your turn. Aim for the spot.
That's Italian.
Boom.
So I hope you can see with the video that what you're seeing within this right here is that essentially all the movements and mechanics that we've been talking about as far as the body movements and everything else is concerned. I tend to think that how these things kind of come together here is, again, you can't just think about them as a one-on-one fencing thing. This is a practice. And when you talk about, like, for example, if you have a type of stoppage with a firearm, you have to clear it out and do certain things here to be able to get into action. So what happens when you deploy an armament, in this case the lance, and it sticks in a way and it goes into somebody and it can't get removed? And because of some of the observations I've had within the, looking at Febus, and also taking a look at just some photographs in regards to how people today will, around the world essentially, will hunt boar, sometimes with a spear. I was actually quite surprised to see that I've seen plenty of times where they hunt with dogs on the ground, and they usually pair up with teams and everything like this to take down the animal. But they also, I didn't know this, but apparently they also chase after them on horse. And interestingly enough, one of the things about that I think is kind of interesting, it looks like the same type of couching positions that you'll see within the manuscripts within the Getty and whatnot, where you are couching a long lance and you're deploying to a lower target. To a young person that is practicing this right here to eventually one day become a man-at-arms, I could see this really being a huge piece right here to consider about why you might want to do that. Now, a big part about that too that I think is kind of interesting in this as well is that when I was doing this stuff with Connor, and I thrust into the lower quarter. So keep in mind, we're taking this from the perspective of being in armor of some form or fashion. There's some details in regard to how societal things worked in there and so on and so forth. So, essentially, to duel outside of armor in his period is kind of verbose. And in many ways, it's kind of frowned upon. It's frowned upon. It's more like you're a brute about these things. But the part that's interesting to me is that, so if that's the case here, then that means how you strike at somebody is quite limited. And if you're trying to take somebody down with a lance, then in my experience, one of the best places to do that is the midsection to the groin. So you're talking about the hips, you're talking about the groin, and you're talking about maybe if they don't have folds, right below the breastplate that allow you to stick and fold somebody over. This makes me consider that, if you don't get past the chainmail, which may or may not actually be as simple as we think it is, but if you don't get past the chainmail, if I hit somebody and I turn them in a way that, because pain prevention comes a part of us when we start experiencing things right here. So, if you hurt your finger, if someone touches you, something you want to pull back real fast here, that kind of changing the shape to me is a large part about what may be the concept of armor. How does this tie together here in regards to hunting and whatnot? Well, a lot of time what I've seen with some of the hunting videos out there, and I encourage people, please, if you have hunting experience with a spear, please share your experiences here. But from what I've seen, and again, just in videos, is that a lot of times spears become long hands that lock up and basically do not allow penetration beyond a certain point. And in regards to that, it becomes the facet of, you are taking the time to, when you lock this thing up, you're holding it in place. If this is the case, which is how I kind of see it, it makes a wound and then the lugs on the side stop on bones and basically don't let the animal ride up this thing to get you. To a person that is fighting in the 14th century, this is an enormous amount of skill set, because one of the things about this right here that made me think about it, as you may have seen it within the video, is that essentially there comes a point in time where if I have to drop this person, I put the spear into them and they collapse, this thing is no longer beneficial for me, and I still may have other things that are surrounding me. In a modern context, you'll see people that use rifles and so on and so forth, and they'll be shooting in a certain direction, and then they drop and they pull out a pistol or something along the lines right here. This is about the concept of tactical approaches, where it comes from. I've run dry, but there's still danger in the proximity, so I need to still fill the space with metal and stuff. So rather than loading a magazine, I pull a sidearm because it's already loaded. And these kind of tactical considerations that make people, as far as how we shift space and everything else, are big parts of that. So when it comes down to this, that's why if you saw in the video or how I'd stick him, and then I'm not sure if it was hurt, I would say do a tug test. If I can pull this thing out, I don't have to let go of my main arm. I keep doing the thing I have to work here with that main arm. But if I lose it, if it gets locked in him somehow in some form or fashion, don't mess with it. I can use step work and turn work to get this thing wide and then to be able to deploy either the secondary, which is your sword potentially, or the dagger, depending on proximity of an assailant. And to me, I'd be very interested out there to kind of understand more about this. I think that a lot of times when they talk about hunting and the kind of things that come with that, these are things right here that would absolutely be necessary to deal with when you're talking about a wild animal. The thing is, one thing that I was taught, especially when it comes down to conflict, is that essentially all people turn into wild animals when danger and threat and injury starts happening to them. So being able to hold on to an animal and then being able to go beyond that are two major facets that potentially would have prepared young men-at-arms, knights, nobles, etc., for some of the tasks that they may have had to do. And that may have been like their trader time, right? They're being able to hit on a target effectively and then to maintain through that target as they hold on to it. So anyway, this is just a quick video on that right here. And again, I wanted to show the walkthrough of the whole process and kind of just wanted to share what my thoughts and feelings on the matter were in general. I'd be very curious to see what you all say about that as well. Again, a lot of times as I go down this martial path of Armatsari, and I go to what I call oftentimes life beyond the touch. There are definitely large considerations that we don't have to consider today because we are no longer in that space of necessarily having to do certain things. So, tools have changed for hunting, for war, etc. And as a consequence, we've lost touch with that. So as I study these things right here, it makes me consider other considerations that we may have to do, because once you stab in there, now what? And if you don't have immediate actions afterwards, one thing that may happen, and I've had this happen not during that training, but like I've had a spot where I hit somebody and knocked him over, and they grabbed my lance, and the thing came up, and and I'm wearing a helmet, but it dinked the side of my helmet. Well, that's great because I have a visor, but what happens if it's an open face visor? What if I'm not having a visor? What if it's a kettle helmet that pops me off right here in those type of directions? All things to consider about this period of time. Hard to consider, hard to know, but this type of exploration I think is valid, especially when you start trying to figure out the mentality of the time. So, with that being the case here, that's gonna wrap up the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a little bit of a special here. Kind of wanted to see what people have thought about it all. But again, please leave your comments below. Love to hear what your thoughts are on this. If you have done boar hunting in that form or fashion, or experienced it even on horseback, maybe share some of your experiences out there. Be very interested to hear about that. Again, this is not to be a morbid discussion, but this is to respect the period of time and perhaps maybe shed some light on some things out there that we all may be missing, and to help us understand a little bit more about historical martial arts and the way that we may have done them. Again, if you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. Hit the bell. Don't forget, more content will be coming every week, and we'd love to have you with us. With that being the case, everybody, as always, until next time, please stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.